Okay, to all the God lovers, right? Animals are different than humans. King Solomon says this. Human beings are always looking up. They always want to become better, closer, something more, right? Animals, they're kind of always looking down. They're always looking down. They want to get a good meal, good food, feel good, right? So human beings, we know that human beings want to become a better person. That's why human beings, they have wealth, they have comfort in America. What do? The next thing they do, they're protesting about something. They become activists, right? That's what human beings are. It's not a bad thing. We join groups. We put memes on Facebook, right? So we're going to see today that becoming a better person and growing has different approaches, even in Judaism. And the Rebbe has quite a revolutionary approach in the human quest. Now, nowadays, it's so popular nowadays that people will be into self-help books. So popular nowadays, right? If you're a little younger, self-help apps, reminders or whatever it is. And we're going to see that the Rebbe had a certain approach in becoming a better person, living a meaningful life, where he not only did he feel this way and act this way, but this is something that he was openly would speak to people and give advice on this. And so we are going to see the Rebbe's approach today, and you'll see, I think it'll resonate with a lot of people. So first we'll go through the classic approach. Now, we're going to call the classic approach improvement follows a bottom-up progression. Okay, that's the classic approach. So this is actually in Judaism, bottom up and inside out, right? That sounds like a self-help TED talk, right? So I got to start bottom up, inside out. Remember, you only have to remember 4 letters: B-U, I-O, right? Well, okay, doesn't spell anything. Okay, so we're gonna go. Generally, bottom up, inside out means first you got to fix the negative inside, and then you can grow higher, right? We're going to see this actually has in King David in the Psalms, actually says this, Psalm number 24. My wife actually teaches Psalms every Monday. They study Psalms with the women. They're not holding a 24 yet. Yeah, so you want to read 24? So 146, text 2.
Who shall ascend the mountain of God, and who shall stand in his holy place? One who has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not borne my soul into vanity, and has not sworn deceitfully.
All right, so this is the commentators talk about this verse here. So, who shall ascend the mountain of God? What's the mountain of God? Is it a spiritual mountain? Yeah, it's spiritual relationship with God. Has different meaning. But what does it say? Nikika paim bar leva. You have to have clean hands, a clear heart, right? If you're holding sins, it's no good. You can't really connect to God. Let's talk about the mountain of God for a second. Imagine you're climbing a mountain. Last year, I went with a bunch of rabbis to Alaska, and we went for a weekend. So anyways, it was just for Shabbos, but they took us to a glacier to hike it. None of us had ever hiked a glacier before, and the rabbis of Alaska haven't either. So I come there. Now I'm younger, but there were some rabbis in the mid-70s, and they come there, and we're like, so what? We're like, what's this glacier? Everyone was expecting a cafe or something next to that glacier. Anyways, so they come and they're like, okay, I want to put plastic bags on your feet. So everyone's like, okay, why? They're like, there's no way you're not gonna get soaking wet, Okay, put on plastic. And then they're like, okay, everyone come here. Now put your shoes on. Okay, they start giving out spikes. And I saw these older rabbis. They're like, what are these? They're like, oh, you need spikes if you want to walk on ice. And everyone was like, but who's walking on ice? It's like, oh, everyone here, right? And it was actually a phenomenal hike, and it was amazing. Some people even fell in waist deep and stuff like that. It was amazing. Going through the blue ice of Alaska. However, when you mountain climb, so there was one rabbi there who was from somewhere in Washington, and he is like, oh, I brought my own spikes. I brought my own thing. I have my own gear, right? If you want to climb mountains well, you got to be fit, you got to practice, you got to research online, you got to get the right gear, right? So it's the same thing. You want to get spiritual heights, you want to become a better person, get close to God. King David says, you want to climb the mountain of God, you got to go and prepare yourself. So that's what he's saying. He's saying you want to get close to God, you got to purify yourself, right? You got to cleanse your heart, cleanse your mind, If it's full of garbage, it'll be difficult. So that is improvement following inside out, right? You're going from the inside and you're saying, now I'm ready to climb after all this time. Not like that guy over there, right? Who's not ready. Okay, here's another verse, and this is another verse that has to do with Tehillim. So the commentators on that verse actually say, like, if you're too into physical things, you won't have space for spirituality. No wonder you'll be numb to it, right? You're just like, you're full of other stuff. So you got to clear that out. Now with text 3, let's see another verse in this idea.
Turn away from evil and do good, seek peace and pursue it.
All right, so this is also from King David, chapter 34. He says this is how you get close to God. First, you got to turn away from evil. You got to stop doing bad things. If you're doing bad things, if you have too much negativity, right? You got to get rid of that negativity. Then after that, you can do good, right? So that's the inside-out, bottom-up approach. So now, in truth in Judaism, you have, we're going to call bottom-up is first improve yourself, and then you can go higher, right? Go up the mountain. Now, in Judaism, you have two types of mitzvahs. There are mitzvahs. A mitzvah, what does a mitzvah mean, everybody?
Good deed.
It's a commandment of God. Commandment of God is a mitzvah. A mitzvah means a commandment, right? If God doesn't command it, then however good it is, it's not a mitzvah. A mitzvah means God says, I want you to do this for me. If he doesn't say it, or there's no commander, then there's no commandments, right? So I always say that just because, it's my job. Okay, so when the two types of mitzvahs in the Torah, one type is between human and God, Jew and God, right? Other one is human to human, bein adam l'chavero. So now, just like we have the bottom-up approach, and this is the classic approach, and this is not only in self-help books and a lot of stuff out there, first work on yourself, then you can work on somebody else, but this is in Judaism. We just read King David said it. So we have actually in the Talmud, it says, here's text number 4. Text number 4 is going to tell us, this is what it says about influencing other people.
Beautify yourself and then beautify others.
So kshoit atzmacha means beautify yourself. Actually, the word kshoit also means be true to yourself. And then you can be true to others, right? Be true to yourself and then you can be true to others. There was a famous Rebbe named Rav Mendel of Kutsk, and he had said all these sharp different lines. He was a very sharp rabbi, extremely influential in Russia. So when he got older, he said, when I was younger, I wanted to change the world. I got a little older, I said, the world is tough. Maybe my country, change my country. Got a little older, I said, maybe I'll change my city. A little older, okay, my family for sure. He's like, now I'm an old man. If only I could just change myself a little bit, right? That's what he said about himself. Now, Rav Mendel of Kutsk was obviously a great influential rabbi, right? But he was extremely true to himself. He was extremely honest. In fact, he was known to be, I'd say brutally honest with himself would be an understatement. And he was always pushing himself to goals. And these are effective. It's true he helped a lot of other people, but of course it's very effective if you change yourself before you try and help somebody else. It's like going to a doctor, right? If you go to a doctor and he's like, boy, you better lose weight, and he's very heavy set, it'll be difficult to receive it for him, right? Constantly people are complaining about politicians doing this, right? Parents to children, they're like, you better study, and they don't study, or they didn't study, right? So this is the general approach that I think is very common, but it's also even very common in Judaism. And it's like a step-by-step process. Start with yourself, and then you can go out. When you're good, then you can go out and change other things. So we are going to see that now, again, if you do not beautify yourself, if you're not kshoit atzmacha, if you're not true, honest to yourself, then other people won't believe you, right? And you won't be as effective. So this was generally the approach in Judaism. And today we're going to bring the Rebbe's approach, which is quite interesting. Now, it's important to remember that the Rebbe's approach is also 100% based on Judaism. There were a lot of times that the Rebbe would take an idea and look at this generation, idea in Judaism, and say, wow, this is like a way of life for this generation, right? And we're going to see here that the Rebbe viewed our generation different, and therefore our process in betterment and in helping others is very different than previous generations. So to start, this is an amazing term on text 5. Text 5, if you could read it. Text 5.
The world advises that when facing an obstacle, if you cannot go under it, you must leap over it. I maintain leap first.
Okay, so this is a statement by the Rebbe Marash, the 4th Rebbe in Lubavitch. If you speak a little bit of Yiddish, the words are lichatchila ariber. Could everyone say it? Lichatchila ariber. Okay, very, very important term. Now, the 4th Lubavitch Rebbe said it, but I guess it popularized in the times of the 6th Lubavitch Rebbe. The 6th Rebbe was a rabbi in Russia, Stalinist Russia. They were trying to utterly destroy Judaism. So he told his Hasidim they have to work in a lechatchila ariber procession. That's the way they got a service. So this is the classic approach. This is what the 4th Lubavitch Rebbe said. If you can't go under it, go over it. You first try and go under the regular way, natural way. If not, you got to go over. You got to find a way to climb over. However, he said, "Ichzad, I say, lechatchila ariber, just go over in the first place." So the previous Rebbe told his Hasidim, he said, you know, in Russia, Judaism is 0% allowed. And therefore, let's just totally live as full Jews. We'll make yeshivas, we'll convince people, other Jewish people, to embrace their Judaism as full Jews, right? We're just going to do it fully, as if there's no obstacles. We're not even taking the obstacles into account. That's what he said. Now, the Rebbe took this motto, and the Rebbe actually said, this is actually the way of life we all need to live. We all have to go over first. So what does that mean? We're going to talk about now, and we'll go and we'll bring another excerpt in the Talmud that the Rebbe would quote. Page 149. Any questions so far? All right, 149.
This world is like a banquet. Grab and eat, grab and drink.
So the Talmud says, it's like a banquet. Now, in the context of the Talmud, it says it's kind of like this. Let's say you come to a banquet, a wedding, and you come late. You come late. And they're going to put everything away, right? Put everything back in the fridge. You got to just grab whatever you can eat and take that thing, grab whatever you can drink and take that thing. So the Rebbe would say that in the previous generations, and the Rebbe would say this, people had the ability to slowly work on themselves and transform themselves and grow within and then go and transform others. However, in this time, the Rebbe viewed as we're at the times before Mashiach, the final redemption, where we believe Jewish people will be returned to Israel, the world will become a world of peace, and we have to bring it closer by doing good deeds. He said, there's no time to think too much about yourself, even in a positive way. You got to go and grab and do whatever good thing you can do. Every opportunity, every mitzvah you can do, you got to just grab it. Stop calculating so much. What's good for you, what's not, what's meant for you. Go and do whatever good thing you can do. That was how the Rebbe translated this Gemara. So now, if you think about it, this is actually the opposite of what we said earlier. Earlier we said bottom up, inside out, right? But this is actually the opposite. It's like go over and just do whatever you can to help, do whatever good you can do. Lichatchila ariber. Don't work with the obstacles within yourself. You might have personality traits, weaknesses, voices in your head telling you that you can't do it, or it's not you, or you need multiple lifetimes to embrace Judaism. But the Rebbe would say, no, that's all in your head. Lichatchila ariber. At this time, you got to grab and eat. You got to just grab opportunity when you get a mitzvah opportunity. Go do it, and don't worry about yourself. Okay, so we're going to talk about how that works. How does that work, right? So we're going to go, and we'll go to the next text. So hopefully we'll talk about how it works. We'll let it ruminate with us a little bit. We'll understand this idea, and you'll see how it's actually very practical, directed in life. Okay, so if you want to read text 7a on page 150. Did you read it? You read already, right? Yes, okay.
You asked me, how can I involve myself in disseminating the teachings, directives, and practice of Chabad to others when I have not yet fulfilled the dictum, beautify yourselves and only then beautify others? I have two responses to your pondering. Firstly, it is not acceptable to withhold these teachings from individuals in your surroundings, simply because you are not the way you should be. After all, your personal deficiency is not their fault.
Okay, so this is a Chabad rabbi, the Rebbe writes this. And he says his job is to teach Jewish Hasidism, Chabad philosophy. So he writes to the rabbi, he says, how can I do it if I'm not so proficient myself? Or, let's use the exact words. He says, I didn't do kashoit atzmach, I didn't beautify myself, I didn't perfect myself. So the Rebbe says two responses. Response number one we just read. Response number one is, why should they lose out? Why should the students lose out because you are imperfect? Because you didn't do kashoit atzmach. Why? They're coming, they're ready to study, they're ready to learn, and you're like, I can't really study because, I can't really teach because I'm not really holding there myself. So the Rebbe tells him, he says, you might be lacking, but that's not their fault. That's not their guilt. That's not their problem, right? That's your problem. So go and invest and do whatever you can for them. That's what the Rebbe tells him. So if you want to kind of understand more, you have a teacher, right? Sometimes someone comes in, sometimes happens the job of a rabbi, certain situation, go teach this or do that. And I might say, or a teacher might say, well, I'm not perfectly proficient in it, right? So there's two options really you could do. One is you could say, push off, right? Push off. Wait a few years, 20, 30 years. Let me become an expert on the subject, and then I will teach a class on it, or then I will educate. Or the other attitude would be, I know more than them on this. I have something to teach. Can I help them? What can I teach for them, right? Stop thinking about my perfection or my knowledge. What can I teach? I committed to this, or I have the opportunity to this. Do I have something to offer? And let me do that, because why should they miss out? Because I am not complete. Now, when you're talking about, and really this is kind of two ways of thinking the question, right? One way is, you could say, how do I become a good teacher? Well, if you become a good teacher, you better get educated, study a lot, right? This is how you become a good teacher. But if you ask yourself, how can I go? Can I help them? Can I teach them something? What do they need to know? Maybe I can prepare that. Then you'll be able to teach. You'll definitely be able to teach them. So you got the teacher's need. A good teacher has to master the subject. The students need to learn spurs of teacher self-improvement. So there are two ways the Rebbe is saying of doing this. This guy says, I want to teach Chabad philosophy or whatever. I have the opportunity to teach Chabad philosophy. The Rebbe is, but I haven't done kishot atzmacha. I haven't perfected myself. So the Rebbe tells him, that's all if you're looking at your needs as the teacher's needs. Well, you can do that. But if you're looking at their needs, they need to know information now, and you have information for them. So don't think about yourself. Think about them and think about what you can teach, which leads to point number 2 in the Rebbe's letter. By the way, this theme is super common, as you'll see soon. Okay, 7b. Unqualified teacher number 2.
When you set the goal of beautify yourself, you must seek and exploit all possible methods and means of increasing your success. Now, when you are acutely aware that you will soon face numerous individuals and you will have to discuss important topics with them, that awareness will itself most certainly assist you in your battle for self-improvement and make your victory far quicker and easier.
So here's the next thing the Rebbe says, and this is actually even deeper. He says, not only do you need to teach for their sake and not think about your gain, but teaching them will help you protect yourself, will help your gain. By you leaving your mindset that you have to have a perfected understanding before teaching, that will actually gain, that will actually help you grow. Yeah.
What if you teach the wrong thing or something that's harmful? What happens then? Give them the wrong information.
Well, so
This is bad advice.
no, that's a good question. That's a really good question. So obviously, the context does make a difference, right? We spoke before. We said we don't want a doctor who doesn't have, we don't want a doctor who's saying the facts. Although sometimes there are people who say the facts, and it's like, oh, it's okay. They'll say don't copy me, right? Maybe that's what you should do if the information is harmful. Say, don't copy me. But yes, obviously we're talking about somebody who knows something that they can gain. There's something they can gain, but he doesn't feel perfected in a sense, like he's not an encyclopedia on the subject. But yeah, so if what you're teaching is going to be harmful, then if you think about the students, you'll be like, wait, I don't want to harm them, right? Now, I presume this guy the Rebbe was speaking to a rabbi here. And so the guy obviously knew something, he wasn't. And, there's sometimes we say like, oh, I don't know anything about Judaism. And then you meet somebody and you realize you know so much more than them, right? So the Rebbe would always tell people, he would say, if you know Aleph, teach Aleph. If you know Beis, teach Beis, right? A lot of times we'll be like, someone will be like, hey, excuse me, do you know about this thing in Judaism? And we'll be like, oh, I'm not religious, I don't know. Wait, but I really want to know. And if you have that knowledge, then the Rebbe would say, think about their need. Don't think about your proficiency or your level of religiousness. Okay, so with that, so the commitment and the actually thinking about the other person will actually help you grow. So here's a great video, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. I know a little bit of background information. That's not there.
Rabbi Meshulam Weiss and his wife Eileen were married in 1957. 3 days before their wedding, they had a private audience with the Rebbe.
So came the Rebbe to the temple, and the Rebbe looked at it, read it, and then he looked up, and he said to us, is it Yiddish? So I said, yeah, I speak Yiddish, and he said Yiddish, and my Kala, she said to the Rebbe, I understand Yiddish, but I don't speak it that well. I don't express myself that well in Yiddish. So the Rebbe said, all right, when I speak to the chassan, I'll speak in Yiddish, and when I speak to the Kala, I'll speak in English. And that's what he did. So maybe a few seconds goes by, and all of a sudden, my wife starts to cry. And she looks at the Rebbe, and she says to him, could the Rebbe please ask the chassan to leave the room? I want to speak to the Rebbe in private. Well, I was in shock. I think the Rebbe was also in shock. And the Rebbe gave me a look, and I just backed out and walked out of the room. As I came out into the hallway, Rabbi Gronin came running over and said, where's the Kala? I said, she's still inside. He said, no, you can't do that. We don't do it that way. I said, well, that's the way it is. What am I going to do? And maybe about a good 20 minutes goes by that my wife is inside with the Rebbe talking. And then she finishes. And she opens the door and she says, the Rebbe said you should come back in. So I come back in, and I forget exactly how we were talking, but we more or less the Chidus was ending at that point. And we started backing to the door, and the Rebbe got up from behind his desk, and he walked us to the door. And the two shaymen were waiting outside. My wife went on her way, and I went my way. And the next time I saw my wife was under the chuppah. And after the chuppah, we of course went into the yichud room. And as soon as we went into the yichud room, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, what did you talk to the Rebbe about in there for 20 minutes? So my wife said, well, I hope you're not upset. I told the Rebbe I want to call the wedding off. This was, remember, Thursday night, we're getting married Sunday. And the Rebbe said, why do you want to call off the wedding? So I said to the Rebbe, because I have a terrible temper. I have no patience, and I lose my temper very easily. And until now, there's something, a chassan kala, he doesn't see everything because, but once we're married, it won't take long, he's going to realize he made a big mistake. He married the wrong woman, or he married a shrew, and will probably end up in divorce. So I've been thinking about it, she said, and I decided I would rather not get married at all than get married and get divorced. So I said to what the Rebbe said. He said, the Rebbe smiled. And the Rebbe said to me, in English, the Rebbe said to me, I'm going to tell you something. The Rebbe is going to bless you with many children. And the children will teach you great patience. So there's no reason for you to call off the wedding. And until you start having the children, you should do volunteer work in a hospital, preferably with children in the hospital. And that will also help you become patient with people, and your temper will not be a problem.
So there you see the Rebbe with the outside-in approach, right? It's the opposite of what we said before, inside out. That Rebbe said outside in. You'll deal with your kids, you go to the hospital, and you learn patience. Now, I know some of their kids, some of the 16 kids they had. Now, I wanted to tell you something kind of interesting. They had 16 children. They're all older than me, even the youngest one. And a couple years ago, I knew one of them, and he said, "Oh, you want to hear an interesting story?" So shortly after they got married, she did not become pregnant fast, actually, and she went to a doctor, and the doctor said that she had some condition that she could not have a baby. So she went back to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, "I already gave you a blessing, you'll have babies." Anyway, he's told to go to a certain doctor, and she got pregnant. And she had a child, and then she had 15 more. Now, I would say, I can tell you exactly when it was, if I calculate the years, but it's about 15 years ago around. Her son told me, he said, my mom had some form of cancer this year, and it was right before Rosh Hashanah. So you're praying for the new year. So she told her kids, pray for me on Rosh Hashanah, because I have a big operation and they're not sure how I'll do or whatever it was. Anyways, they prayed for her. After Rosh Hashanah, she had the operation, and it was like an extremely successful operation. So she's in the doctor's office, and he said, "Oh, so successful, cancer-free or whatever it is," and she's crying. He said, "Why are you crying?" She said, "Well, I told my kids to pray for you, to pray for me, and their prayers were answered, and I didn't need it." So the doctor said, "Oh, you adopted children?" And she said, "No, I didn't adopt children." He said, "Are you serious? We just opened you up, and you have this condition that you're not able to have children, right? This condition that she was diagnosed years before, the same condition was still there, and she realized how every child she had was literally a scientific miracle. All 16 kids, right? Isn't that incredible? All right, true story. I know the people, I know their numbers, and I remember when it happened. Okay, so one of her sons actually was well known. He was on the Shark Tank. But explain to you after. He unfortunately died young. He passed away very suddenly. But the original iPads, they weren't very loud. So he created like a little thing you put on the speaker that amplifies it, like a tiny little thing. And he went to Shark Tank and he made a deal. I don't know what happened to the product. I use Android.
Was the mother, did you become patient?
I'm sure she did if her kids survived. I'm sure if their kids are still alive, Okay. So anyways, so now we're going to get to another idea of this outside-in idea. This outside-in idea is connected to what we said before. When there's obstacles, when there is, whether internal or external obstacles, you need to just go over. You need to start outward in. So we're going to do, this is another example which is about charity. And it's actually another very interesting one. Okay, so the first case study we did was an unqualified teacher. It's imperative to help others will in turn aid us in our own self-improvement. When we focus on helping someone else, it actually helps us improve ourselves. Okay, now about charity. Okay, this is a very interesting talk from the Rebbe in 1957. Who are we holding by? Yeah.
A Hasidic discourse states that charity should be given in an infinite manner. This was the first time I encountered such terminology applied to giving charity. As I studied the discourse, I asked myself how it might be possible to give charity in an infinite manner. After all, charity entails giving money or physical resources with monetary value. How can any physical entity possibly be infinite? Now, Judaism delineates several standards of charitable giving. According to the typical standard of charity, we donate 1/10 of our earnings. That is considered the proper minimum margin. Then there is the standard of 1/5, which is considered a generous margin of charity. Finally, there is the standard of charity referred to as charity by judgment, whereby we judge ourselves honestly to determine the amount we require to sustain our own existence so that we can donate everything beyond that amount to charity. According to the latter standard, our charity is not defined by a specific percentage. It is neither a tenth nor a fifth, nor even a specific figure greater than a fifth. Nevertheless, in the final analysis, even such giving has a limit. For even if we were to give away all that we possess, it would still add up to a quantifiable sum. Rather, there is an entirely different approach to giving charity, whereby we do not consider ourselves at all. Instead, as soon as we encounter someone in need, our response is to immediately resolve that need, however large it may be, without considering whether we own that amount or not. In other words, the degree to which we feel the pain of our fellow and relate to their need is infinite, unequivocal, and unconstrained, so that there is no room for any calculations whatsoever regarding our personal needs. We have but one consideration. We must provide the needy individual with the amount they require. If we do not have that sum ourselves, we will put every effort into obtaining it. And when we truly make this resolve, God will certainly assist us in fulfilling this mitzvah.
So this is a really interesting perspective on charity. The Rebbe is actually quoting a different mimer of one of the previous Rebbes. He said, "My followers have to give charity, unlimited amount of charity." So at the beginning, you can see the Rebbe says, what does that mean? There's always an amount. If we're talking about charity, it's always going to be an amount. How could we call it unlimited? So if you listen carefully, what he says is, in Jewish law, one has to give a tenth of their income. You're supposed to give up to a fifth. But then he says there's something even more. That you're not giving to fulfill your obligation. You're giving to get the job done, whatever the job is, to help the person in that situation. And that's infinite charity. That's infinite charity because you're not thinking about yourself. If I'm doing the obligation, you're thinking about the job, the thing that you're supporting, the thing that you're helping. How can I get the job done? He says, if I don't have enough, I'll find ways to help in whatever way I can help. And that's called infinite charity. So there's giver focus and receiver focus. Giver focus is, it's defined by the giver. What can I give? What's for me and what can I give? However, true charity is receiver focus. And it's limitless. Because it's defined, what job am I getting done with this? Who am I helping? How am I helping? What does he need? You know, sometimes we give to something and we say, okay, I gave it, don't talk to me, I did my job, I did my part. But this is truly, when we're giving tzedakah, we should try to be concerned as much as we can with the job that's being done with the receiver. There's an interesting, the Rebbe actually, the previous Rebbe once spoke about it. He said that there was a certain book he wanted to publish in America, and there was somebody who said, I can't afford it. It was a lot of money back then, especially back then. And the guy said, I'm going to do it. And suddenly, new job opportunities came to this guy, and he was able to fulfill his pledge. So the previous Rebbe said, people don't understand. Sometimes they think, oh, well, let's see what I have and what I can give. He said, the moment that guy committed to get the job done, God said, wow, this guy has a lot of faith. How can I open up new channels for this guy to be able to do it? Here's
Rabbi Moshe Tzur is the founder and administrator of a number of educational and charitable institutions in Jerusalem.
actually
In
Air Force veteran in Israel.
1969, he was serving in the Israeli Air Force.
We was in Birgat Rafa without any good conditions and good food. One day stopped trailers and gave to each one of us a package. It's a Chag Purim Sameach from the Rebbe Milubavitch. And we always wonder who is the Rebbe. And it was like a Fata Morgana in the middle of the desert to receive a piece of candy and regarding from somebody that really care for you. And I was very impressed. In 1971, in the Milchemet HaKasha, one day Chabad people asked us to put the tefillin, but at that time you don't know if it's Monday or Tuesday or Shabbat, and all of a sudden somebody asked me to put the tefillin. So when I started to say Kriyat Shema, I tried to say it, Shema Israel, and I knew it, so I said it like fluently, and then I got crying because it was very emotional for me. And since that days, I got back to my
religions. When I come to Chicago, I got to know Rabbi Daniel Moskowitz, he should rest in peace. I become very close to Lubavitch community and to Chabad. And he used to come to my warehouse every Friday in the morning. And one time they honored me in some dinner that the Chabad house did. And I was twice in Yahdut with the Rebbe. And one time he asked me what I'm doing, and I had an idea to be helping some more Jewish community. And he was telling us how is important the mitzvah of Ve'afta Le'racha Kamocha, to love the others just like to love yourself. And the Rebbe was like asking a question: why is the heart of the person, of the human being, is in the left side? Because in Judaism, the right is the chesed. If it's so important, why Hashem didn't make the human being create that the heart will be on the right side and not in the left side? So the Rebbe, he should rest in peace, he said that when a Jew looks at the other, he has to know that the heart is for the others. Because when I look at you, your heart is in my right hand, and my heart is in your right side. So when the heart is over the other, then you really make the mitzvah of the Ve'afta Le'racha Kamocha. Because the heart is not for you, the heart is always for the others. Since then, thank God, I came back to Israel, and I established 2 important yeshivot and 4 kolenim. And I think that the Rebbe definitely did a very important message in me and in my mission as a Jew. He changed all my perspective about life.
So that is with regard to giving tzedakah. Giving tzedakah is when you're caring about the cause and the other person, then you'll be able to do it truly in an infinite way. There was a famous, anyone ever heard the name Herschel Ostropoller? Herschel Ostropoller? Herschel Ostropoller was like this kind of comedian rabbi who lived in Europe in the late 1700s, I believe. 1700s. And so he was kind of a character. So there was a certain miser in a certain city who would invite poor people to his house on Shabbat. That's what they would do in the olden days. And he would put out good food, and then he would ask a lot of questions to the poor guy. And while the poor guy was eyeing the food, he would finish off all the food, and there was very little left. So Herschel Ostropoller was this rabbi. He was kind of quirky. He said, I have an idea. So he went to this guy's house, and he went Friday night, and they had a special place they would stand, and people would invite them at this guy's house, and he sees a fine table of food, very wealthy guy, and he says, he starts sitting there, and the guy says, where are you from? He says, I'm from Mezhebush. He says, you're from Mezhebush? Mezhebush is a town in Ukraine. He says, do you know my cousin, Moshe Klein? I actually invest in his business. He has a store over there. I actually invest in it. He says, yeah, I know him. He died. Starts eating. Says, he died? Oh my God, my cousin died. No one told me. Okay, but what about his brother-in-law, David Klein? Do you know him? He for sure took over the business. Says, David? Yeah, he also died. Anyways, he keeps eating to put at the next course, and the miser is just so shocked and so in pain. Oh my gosh. But his son took over the business. David has a son who just is added post yeshiva. He for sure took out the business. He says, he died also. Died. No one told me. Oh, good riddance. Money I invested, and my family, they're all dying. What's going on here? He says, give me a second. Let me speak to my wife. He says, she died. He says, she died? What do you mean? She's right over there. So Herschel Ostropoller says, you don't understand. He finishes all the food first. And he says, you don't understand. While I'm eating, everybody's dead. So, taught the miser the lesson. Okay. So anyway, so let's go on. So, first of all, we have unqualified teacher. If you want to help other people, you have to not focus on your own self-improvement, and helping other people will help your own self-improvement. And the same thing with charity. When you give charity because you care about the cause, and you do whatever you can for that cause, then your charity becomes infinite. It's not about you fulfilling your obligation, it's about the idea. In Yiddish they say, as the Inyan soll sein aufgetan. The idea should happen. Now, we're going to get to another interesting category, which is related. How to run a Jewish organization. So, as you know, there's a lot of marveling in different magazines about the success of Chabad. Jews generally are a big minority, a small minority of the population. And then you have Chabads everywhere, growing and flourishing, lots of people, lots of classes, doing all sorts of things. So there's many, many articles about exactly, there's been many businesses that tried to copy the Chabad model, and we're going to get into now the origin of the Chabad house model. So here's actually a text number 9. It's called the reverse budget. This is actually written, so they're post-Holocaust, there were a bunch of students who lost their families and ended up being refugees in Shanghai, China. Anyways, there were a lot of Jews in Shanghai, finally got visas, and they came to America. There was a group of about 10 students, they were Polish born, and the Rebbe said, okay, you guys are all moving to Canada to open Judaism. There were Jews, refugees everywhere. They said, you're going to open Jewish institutions. They went there, they started yeshivas. They were just students. They were so poor. Jews were so poor at that time. Things were so difficult. And this is a letter the Rebbe wrote to them. Very interesting letter, text 9 on page 155.
In regard to the discussion at your meeting concerning the deficit in the yeshiva's budget, I've already addressed this with my earlier conversation with you here in New York. Up until now, you tried to run things in a limited way, i.e. to direct your spending in accordance with your income. You should now try the opposite approach. That is to endeavor to increase your income in accordance with the needed expenses. This is in accordance with the saying by the Rabbi Marash, which was given over by my father-in-law, the rabbi, in the name of his father. The world divides us. If you can't go under, you must leap over it. Maintain, leap first. With proper determination.
So as you can see, if you're familiar with Chabad's business model, this is quite common. The Rebbe says, most businesses are income-centered. We're doing the product to make money, right? And therefore, the organization's activity is going to be based on the funds. We're going to say, this is what we have this year, this is what we're going to do. So the Rebbe in that context is talking about how many students to expand the yeshiva to. The Rebbe says, that's not the Chabad way. The Chabad way is you purpose-oriented, activity-centered. The fundraising goals should be based on what the organization needs to accomplish. When you're focused on the goal, what you need to accomplish, God will find a way to make it happen. And that's the way the Rebbe viewed it. Now, obviously, the Rebbe knew if you're doing a mitzvah and you're doing the right thing, and you're doing it for God, God will find a way to make it happen. I don't know of any Chabad house that doesn't work like this. There are times when finances are difficult in Chabad houses, and people are like, oh, now it's going to crash. I remember one time there was something difficult we were going through, and someone saw me in the street, and he said, oh, you're still here? And I said, yeah, I'm still here. I ain't going nowhere. So he said, oh, I thought there was something good of the building you're going on, you're leaving. And the truth is this is the success of Chabad. We rely on this, what the Rebbe said. You take the goal, you know what the right thing is going to be, you know what you need to do, and you go for it. And somehow everything picks up and works out in that way. And this is, again, the outside-in way of doing it. So here we have unqualified teacher, we said, infinite charity. We said charity when you're focusing on the need and not on yourself. Then the charity becomes infinite. It becomes like infinite fire from God. And reverse budget. You determine what needs to be done, and based on that, you set your goals based on that. I want to say that it's like, a lot of families in the Jewish community have a lot of children. Now, every boy needs a pair of tefillin. Bar mitzvah tefillin could be about $4,000 nowadays if you want to get a nice pair. And you got to send your kids to Jewish school. Jewish school tuition is so difficult. Jewish school tuition is so difficult. It's the most expensive expense in Jewish communities. Nonetheless, you always see that the kids all grow up and they get past that stage and they grow and they start their own families and it works out. And the Rebbe would say the same thing. If you're working on educating your child to be a good Jew, that's your focus. The finances will all come. I remember there was a yeshiva here in town a couple of years ago during COVID. Yeshiva from Israel, they couldn't go to Israel because of the pandemic, so they came to Prescott. I offered people to come visit. Most people didn't want because they're like from New York and bringing the virus. Anyways, they brought a prime Jewish band to town to make a concert for their camp. So I told a few people to go there. Anyways, one of the people who came, they said, how much do they pay tuition? I don't remember what tuition was. I said, this is a cheaper camp. It's $5,000 for the summer. I said, $5,000 every kid? How do the parents afford it? I said, not only that, but they're paying for this kid and all the other kids. But they're focused on the goal. They know that as part of the education of the kids, what could be a better investment than educating children to be good Jews? So this was the reverse budget model of the Rebbe. Okay, so that is these are all between man and man, right? These are all between man and man. Now we're going to go from the top down, right? We're going to go back to that example. Instead of going from the bottom up, we're going to go up to bottom. So we're going to go, all right, so now we're going to see that when it comes to bottom up, a lot of times, or top to bottom, so a lot of times we say, well, let's see what I can do to serve God, what I can do to be a good Jew, what qualities I have, and let me work from there. As we'll see, the Rebbe viewed that if God presents a Jew with a goal, then we have the power to achieve it. And therefore, we should just jump right in. So we're going to go to the Rebbe's approach to self-improvement, having to do with us serving God. Now, as we said before, everything the Rebbe says is based in Torah. So there's actually a very interesting, we said earlier, King David says, first sur meirah, first clean yourself up, and then aseh tov, then do good, right? But the Rebbe was of the opinion, no, first you need to do good, and then you'll work on all the whatever bad stuff you need to have. Now there are actually, instead of worrying about your circumstances, think only what needs to be done, instead of climbing weed. Now, obviously, as we said before, everything the Rebbe said is based on the Torah. So there's just a very interesting example that we're gonna, before we get into the subject. Anyone know the first two plagues of Seder? First two plagues.
Blood.
Blood, then frogs. What was blood, right? The Nile, which the Nile River was the idol of Egypt. That's where they got all their sustenance from. That was the irrigation system. Turned to blood, right? And then there's the second plague. The second plague was frogs, right? What happened? Frogs came out of the Nile and just attacked everything. So the Rebbe actually analyzed it once, and he said something very, very interesting. Every plague had something to teach. Now, what does water to blood mean? Water to blood. Water by nature cools down, it's cold, right? Water gets cold unless you heat it up. If you heat it up, you need something out external. Blood is warm, right? So the Rebbe said, what do we see in the Torah? What is the coldness of Egypt? The coldness of Egypt is apathy to God, apathy to spirituality. Some are like, who cares? It's not for me. It doesn't mean anything to me. That was the coldness of Egypt. What did God do? He switched the coldness of Egypt, and he switched it to warmth to spirituality. Then, what's the second plague? Frogs. Frogs are cold. What do they do? So the Torah says, the frogs jumped into the ovens. That's one of the things the Torah says. Jumped in everywhere. Frogs, for kids, they always sing in preschool, frogs in your bread, frogs in your head. There are frogs everywhere. And the Torah quite clearly says frogs went into the ovens and ruined the ovens. Frogs cool off. The Rebbe said, what do we see in the order of the 10 plagues? The first thing was to be passionate about God. After you're passionate about God and holiness in Judaism, then you can cool off the unholy things that you're passionate to, whatever it is, materialism or whatever it is. So this is, so the Rebbe took that, and the Rebbe asked a question. He said, seemingly according to the verse, we should first clean out the old passion, right? So you take an Egyptian, they're obsessed with idolatry. I don't know, whatever it is. They're obsessed with materialism. First, we should cool that off, and then you have space to build up a relationship with God. What do we find? We find that the Torah has the exact opposite order. So, Sandy, if you could read text 10 on page 156.
All the narratives included in the Torah serve as directives and guidance for all generations to come. Similarly, the Torah's accounts with the plague of blood, representing warmth and passion for doing good, preceding the plague of frogs, representing dispassion or negative matters, directs us to follow suit. We must focus on doing good right from the start. As the Rebbe Maharish said, the world advises that when facing an obstacle, if you cannot go under it, you must leap over it. I maintain leap first. Consequently, we also need this approach of leaping over in the sense of immediately working to reveal an abundance of light that will consequently on its own display the darkness, dispel the darkness.
So here's what the Rebbe's opinion was with our relationship with God. We shouldn't think that first we have to correct ourselves or fix our issues before we get close to Him. We see from the story of Pesach, which we know in Haggadah we read, we say the story of Pesach we have to remember every day. It's a lesson for every day, that we have to leave Egypt every day. We see that the first thing God does in the 10 plagues is He first brings in the warmth of God. And only then does He cool down the passions for anything else. So this is a lesson for us, and especially I find, especially for millennials and Gen Z and younger. First, you have to give them something positive to focus on, and then they can go shed the wrong. If you don't have anything positive to focus on, they just work in this cycle of dealing with the wrong stuff. The Rebbe Marash says, first you got to go over. First, be who you're meant to be. Jump into it. Do the mitzvahs that you need to do. And then you can go back and rectify the old. So actually, the Rebbe all felt that, so flood your life with warmth and holiness, and there won't be any room for bad. Right? That's what Sandy just read. Focus on the good, and the bad will just fall away right away. The Rebbe once spoke about it, and we're going to see now. It's not only with regard to getting rid of bad and doing good. Even within the realm of doing good, the Rebbe has an interesting kind of novel approach. So we'll read page 158.
We could argue that in order for a Jew to begin performing mitzvot and drawing closer to God, they would first learn about Judaism and about the laws and the standards of the Torah. We especially need to learn about God, His relationship with the world in general, and His special relationship with the Jewish people. We also need to understand the significance of the mitzvot in general and of each specific mitzvah. In other words, we could argue that in order to do a mitzvot, the person requires a proper introduction and training, comprehensive knowledge, etc. Only once that has been achieved is it possible to proceed with observing the mitzvot in the proper order as benefits the commandments of God. The counter this argument before shares the story of Abraham. God told Abraham to go from where they're at. At that point in the narrative, the Lord had not informed us at all about Abraham's virtues and achievements, and that is precisely the lesson for us. The very foundation and starting point of Abraham's coming close to God is when God told Abraham, go. It began with action. He had to do something to carry out a divine command in actuality.
So as we'll see, as we just read, the Rebbe's approach was that, you know how Jewish everybody is? Fully Jewish. That's our natural state of being, is to do all the mitzvahs. That's who we are, that's who our soul is. And we're not always in tune with it. So the goal is, instead of saying, how do I climb the mountain? You realize you're already on top of the mountain. You're already there. You're already fully Jewish. You should already embrace it right away. You all know that if you meet a Chabad rabbi, the first thing he'll tell you to do is, if you're a man, put on tefillin. If you're a woman, light Shabbos candles, right? That was how the Rebbe viewed Jewish people. Don't say, oh, let me practice, let me read up about it. First I need to study. I need to go do that perfect thing, get ready and build up, understand it. On the contrary, that's actually the false reality. You actually have it inherited and inherit it perfectly. You have it inside you. You're already at the mountain. You're already fully Jewish. Just embrace it. after you embrace it, you'll see everything will fall into place. I remember a couple years ago, and I've been saying this a lot lately, someone said, they said, I'm feeling really Jewish. I want to fight against anti-Semitism. What should I do? So I remember I told them, I said, before you fight against anti-Semitism, you have to decide what you do for Judaism if there was no anti-Semitism, right? Because that's, whatever you would do for Judaism if there was no anti-Semitism is what you would be fighting for, right? So there's some people out there, as soon as there's no anti-Semitism, say, okay, what other causes can I fight for, right? But as Jewish people, we have to remember, the Aseh Tov, no, this is who we are. I'm someone who does mitzvahs, and maybe I'm not doing it perfectly, I'm not doing everything, but today let me do all of them. This is a very interesting idea that the Rebbe had in general in repentance in Jewish law. When you want to repent and say, I'm sorry, and improve yourself, traditionally, first you got to stop doing the bad, stop doing the crime, stop doing the sins, and then you can start doing the positive things. The Rebbe would always say, no, start with the positive. Fill yourself with the positive mitzvahs. Fill yourself with the proactive mitzvahs. And when you fill yourself with the proactive mitzvahs, the negativity will fall away. Negativity will fall away itself. So this is, here's a video example. So top down, just do it. Do the mitzvah, and the understanding and feelings will come. They'll come after.
In 1969, Mr. Gordon Zacks was chairman of the UJA's Young Leadership Cabinet. Shortly after delivering a keynote address to 3,000 communal leaders from across the U.S. and Canada, he was informed that the Rebbe wished to meet with him.
I'm escorted into the Rebbe's study. And I'll never forget it if I live to be 100. This man, there are books piled all the way to the ceiling, all around the office. He stands up. He has these penetrating blue eyes, crystal clear eyes. His skin is almost translucent. I mean, not a wrinkle. Just an incredible, peaceful, penetrating look in his eye. He said, Mr. Zacks, I have read your speech. It is clear to me that you have taken good care of your mind. I can look at you, and it's clear to me that you've taken good care of your body. What are you doing for your soul, Mr. Zacks? That was the opening to the conversation, which lasted an hour and a half. So he says, do you believe in revelation? I said, I believe in God, but I'm not sure I believe in revelation. I believe that the Bible was inspired by God, but I haven't yet accepted the fact that it's word for word written by God. Now listen to this. I mean, this is when it really gets amazing. He says, Mr. Zacks, your problem is you're trying to think yourself to God. You can't think yourself to God. You have to experience the why, the how of being Jewish. And in the living of a Jewish lifestyle, you will discover God. He's within you. But you're trying to connect to him through your head. You have to connect to him through your heart. And you can't get there through your head. You gotta get there through experience. He says, let me send a member of my community to live with you for a year and teach you how to be Jewish. If at the end of the year you find God in your soul, in your heart, you have achieved the greatest gift you will ever have in life. You've got to release yourself from this mental approach to life and God and come with me in this journey of the heart.
So this was the Rebbe's approach. You gotta start with the mitzvah. Jump into it, because you already have it. It's in your soul. When you're talking up to bottom, bottom to up, the brain works bottom to up, it works in a process. But the souls that we have inside of us are already there, yes.
I don't think I said the last time, I watched a video by the Rebbe called The Immense Power of Doing on YouTube. It was just amazing.
Maybe share it on WhatsApp to the group.
I will.
Yeah, all right. So, yeah, well, this is a theme that the Rebbe and Chabad, we really feel that every Jew is perfect inside, and we're revealing that. They're already at the top of the mountain. They're already fully involved. They just don't know it yet. So, we're going to get to the lesson conclusion now. So how to lead, focus on the needs of others and what God desires from us. That's what our focus needs to be. L'chatchila ariba. In this way, we can lead first, seizing every opportunity that comes our way. So in the lesson's conclusion, let's repeat the opening exercise. You are determined to advance in your spiritual and Jewish life. Here's a list of steps that you will take that will take you in that direction. Number the activities in order you believe, the order you believe you should adopt them. All right, we asked the question, anyone have any answers for this? See, you said study Torah, you said do a mitzvah, you said keep Shabbat, meditate, you said meditate on and develop on meditate and develop a greater relationship with God. All right, well, so the truth is the way the Rebbe would probably answer this question is do whatever opportunity comes first. Because that's what God is sending you. Jump on it, go with it. Don't think about what you can do. Don't think about what you can do. Think about what you're able to do, what's in your ability, what's meaningful for you. Think about, no, I have the opportunity to do something for God. I'll just jump into it. You know, we can also make plans, and we also should study Torah, and we should also, make sure that we take an order in things and we learn. But the philosophy that the Rebbe is teaching here is that you go with your soul, and your soul wants to do every mitzvah. So when you have the opportunity to do a mitzvah, you just jump on it. You go. You be fully there, fully present in it. When you start with yourself, you start saying, I like this one, I don't like this one, this is meaningful, this is not meaningful, do I even believe, I did it wrong, the rabbi said I did it wrong, I can't do it anyways, right? That's what happens, you end up doing nothing, or you end up doing less. However, when you're focused on God, and you say, hey, what does God want from me now? Then you can jump in. Now, this just brings up a famous story. There was a rabbi in Egypt named Rabbi David ben Zimra, and he lived in the 13th century, I believe. He was known as the Radbaz. Anyways, he's this rabbi, he gets his letter in the mail one day. The guy says, Dear Rabbi, I didn't pay my rent. What they would do in those days is they would throw you into a pit. So I didn't pay my rent, and I'm only allowed to come out one day a year. What day should I come out? Maybe Passover, I can eat matzah, right? Yom Kippur is the holiest day of the year. Shabbat is such a special mitzvah about the relationship with the Jewish people and God. Rosh Hashanah, I can hear the shofar, right? Which day should I come out? So Rabbi David ben Zimmer wrote back and said, as soon as you get this letter, come out. Because that day is the most important day. That opportunity is the most important opportunity. As soon as you can, jump in and do what you can to serve God. So this is when we know that we can embrace it and we're at the top of the mountain, and when we do it, we'll realize how we're really there, and everything in our life will integrate with that. So now we're going to go, this is a course conclusion, and there's a couple more things we're going to do. If you turn to page 160. So if, I usually don't, we went through, many different ideas that the Rebbe said. We went through optimism, trust in God. We spoke about how important the family unit is. We spoke about how important it is to a lot of the things where everything is good and we're here for a mission. We've got to focus on our soul. These are just some different ideas that we saw. Step out of yourself, discover life's deeper meaning. This was in the last 6 weeks. It was a really great 6 weeks of the course. What are some things, briefly summarize one practical message that personally resonates with you from the Rebbe's perspective on the following areas of life? Does anyone want to share any of these? Work life, could be any idea, yeah.
The one that resonated with me was If you think positive, positive things will happen. I have B positive blood in me. I'm blood is B positive. So I like it.
Well, that's a very, very, very common point in the other species. If you think positive, the positive thinking actually changes the situation. And actually, sometimes it's so difficult to do that. But you just gotta remember, you gotta do it. It's like giving tzedakah. It's not always easy, but you just do it. Anyone else want to share something? Anyone about your work life, family and home, physical health, emotional well-being, life challenges, self-improvement. So life challenges, last week we spoke about Gamzula Tova, just a reminder. We spoke about how everything's for the good. We have to use every situation, challenging situation, to gain, to grow, to get closer to God, to see more good in the world. Emotional well-being. We spoke about the idea of Hesed Chadas, how the soul is pure, the soul is 100% healthy, and the unhealthiness of our life shouldn't be taken out of context. Sometimes we gotta change the subject when we're in an unhealthy cycle, in a negative cycle, until we can reapproach the problem more objectively. We spoke about physical health. That was the course about doctors. We spoke about what doctors have the ability to do, what they don't have to do, how we have to have trust that it will be good. We spoke about family in the home. We spoke about how the home and the family is the conduit. It's not something that is a luxury. It's actually the conduit to transform the world. And your work life, we spoke about how working and business is actually a conduit as well to go and bring holiness to the world. Everyone remember all those things? Okay, good. If anyone, afterwards, if I could just come through with the video and everyone could say something, I'd appreciate it. Okay, so, all right. So, before we finish, just a couple more things. When we look at life, a lot of times we say, God, what does God want from me? Or what's going on? Or why does this need to happen? What am I here for? So this is a really great video which illustrates that idea.
My father was lifted when I was still in college. That was in 1953, and 5 years later, my mother was lifted without admission. So I wrote to the Rebbe a long, long, tearful letter, pouring out my sorrow at the loss of two parents and just being in my 20s. So I wrote the letter, and I made an appointment to go see the Rebbe. I walked into the room. I just stood there, and I cried and cried and cried and cried and couldn't get a word out. The Rebbe just sat there looking at me very kindly. He looked very compassionate, and he looked sad, reflecting my sadness. And then he said to me, ich weiß nicht, was ich kann mehr sagen. Ich habe alles geschrieben in my brief. And I said, I never received the letter. And then we had a very beautiful Yechidus, which was based on what the letter was all about. But it was more wonderful because I received it in person. And then a few weeks later, I did receive the actual letter. All religious people, even non-Jews, believe that the creator of the world is infinite and incomprehensible. Not only did God create the world so many thousands of years ago, but it is our firm belief that God is also the continuous master of the world, who is constantly watching over it and taking care of everything and every individual. Obviously, it is impossible for a human being to understand the ways of God. All believers in God believe also in the survival of the soul. When the physical body ceases to function, the soul continues its existence not only as before, but even on a higher level. And here the Rebbe actually explained to me, and I thought it was beautiful. He knew that I had studied science in school because we had discussed that before. He said if you take a paper and you light a match to the paper is going to change form and shape. It won't be a paper anymore. It will be just ashes. So in that way we can understand that anything that has ever been created or existed will always remain. May God grant that you will carry on the conduct of your home with joy and gladness of heart. and fulfill your responsibilities with joy, as your parents would want you to do. This is the greatest joy that you can bring to their souls. And this will also bring you and your additional blessings, both physically and spiritually, with blessings and then the Rebbe's signature.
So one of the nuances at the end of the video is the Rebbe tells her, instead of focusing on your loss, see what you can bring to your parents, right? See what you can bring to your parents, and that will bring you the greatest joy. So that's how, in general, in Judaism, we deal with souls. That's why we try to dedicate things in honor of the deceased souls, because we believe they're always there, and we need to focus on giving them. That will bring true joy. And this, instead of her being nurtured by her parents, it was time for her to actually nurture them and help them now that they were deceased. There's a story in the Talmud. It says Rabbi Yochanan, who was one of the greatest sages in Jewish history, he was crying. He was on his deathbed. He was crying. So the student said, "Why are you crying?" He said, "I don't know where I'm going in the afterlife. I don't know if I'm going to heaven, to hell. You know, I don't know what I did." So all the commentaries asked, "What do you mean? This is the greatest rabbi in his time in Babylonia. How could he be worried that he wasn't good? I mean, we know that he never stopped studying Torah." So the Rebbe gave an answer once, and actually the Rebbe spoke about it quite emotionally. He said Rabbi Yochanan was so focused on the opportunities and mitzvahs he could do, he never, ever thought about, hey, how am I doing? Am I a good person? Am I a bad person? How am I doing in life? He was always focused on, what can I do more? What can I do for God? What can I do to help others? He was never focused on, only once he was finally so old and he was in bed, before he died, he said, oh, now is the time to think about what my life was like. And that's why he never considered, how will I be rewarded or how will I be punished? Because he was always focusing on the need for now. All right, we'll finish off. So what is our mission? So obviously as Jewish people, we believe we have the Torah. Our mission in the world is to do Torah mitzvahs. But in particular, actually, if you look at figure 6.1, the Rebbe actually hyper-focused on 10 mitzvahs, which he felt were extremely relevant to this generation. The first one is lighting Shabbat candles. Actually, a lot of these different mitzvahs the Rebbe began at different wars, different dangerous situations for the Jewish people. The Rebbe spoke about them and said how they actually bring light. Lighting Shabbat candles. I actually keep Shabbat candles with me often. I actually got someone to light Shabbat candles for the first time in their life this week, who was 96 years old. Lighting Shabbat candles every Friday night. We have calendars. Someone asked me for a calendar. I have them in the car. I don't have them in here. Putting tefillin on every day. That's another one for men. Putting up kosher mezuzahs. To put up a kosher mezuzah in your house is a tremendous mitzvah. It brings protection to you and to your family. You need mezuzahs. I have mezuzahs. If you don't want to get them for me, that's fine. I don't take offense because I don't make a penny on them. I sell them at cost price. I will just tell you, ask me before you buy them, however you buy them, because there's a lot of forged mezuzahs out there. But it's important to put up mezuzahs and kosher ones. Studying Torah. The Rebbe said it's a very important for people to shut everything off a little bit every day and study Torah. And if they do that, they'll realize how everything is really much better than it is. Shut everything off, actually, it was in the 70s. The Rebbe said, don't pick up the phone, right? This is in the 70s. Don't pick up the phone for a few minutes, shut everything out, and go study Torah a little bit every day. We have a lot of classes. I give a class every day. There's JLI. I mean, we can continue to study. If you want to study more things, I can show you videos, podcasts. You're welcome to come study with me. Giving charity. The Rebbe actually said there's a giving charity every day was one of the campaigns the Rebbe started. And the Rebbe said even a small amount, you have to be a giver every day. You have to be on the giving side every day. And you have to hyper-focus that moment, giving a coin into tzedakah. The Rebbe said another important thing is to own Jewish books. Your house should hold Jewish books. They should be dear to you. Eating kosher. Now, eating kosher is a really interesting mitzvah because a lot of people are like, no, I don't eat kosher, you know. But actually, it's easier than you think. I remember there was a mother once came to me and she said, oh my gosh, my kids are vegan. What can I tell them? I said, do you keep kosher? She said, no. I said, you can tell them that they keep kosher. Someone who's vegan minimally keeps kosher, right? And all these things have to be done in baby steps. Every mitzvah has to be done in baby steps because that's the way human beings are. You jump in, but you got to do them step by step because you also want it to internalize. I've koshered people's kitchen before, I remember one time, when I first moved here, my first hospital visit, there was a guy on his deathbed. So I told her, I said, before I was going, I never was with somebody when they were about to die, I was under the rabbi. So I have a little book with little end-of-life prayers, and my wife said, hey, don't forget, tell her she can pray for him to get better. Right? Okay. Think good and it'll be good, right? So I went to the hospital, and there was a VA here, and the guy's dying. Oh, they called me up. They said, oh, can you come? I said, can I come tomorrow? No, you have to come today. Okay, so I come right away. I told this lady, I said, what would I do in this situation? I would write a letter to the Rebbe, to the Rebbe's Ohel. And by the way, there's an amazing trip. People around the world go for Shabbos. People go there all the time, though. Next time you're in New York, for sure you need to go. I would write a letter there. That's how you pray there. Write a letter to the Rebbe asking for to pray for you for a blessing. And they'll put it on the Rebbe's grave. Right? That's what I told her to do. So she took out her iPad. I mean, this is somebody who doesn't like Shabbos candles. Really unaffiliated. So they wrote a letter and they sent it. I said, and I would take upon myself a mitzvah, a couple mitzvahs. Why don't you light Shabbos candles? Okay, I light Shabbos candles. Do you keep kosher? No. I said, okay, why don't you keep kosher 1 day a week? Okay, that I could do. All right. I said, call me in the morning. Anyways, I was certain this guy died. And I was certain they didn't call me back because 90% of the time people don't call rabbis back. And that's probably because 90% of the time rabbis don't call people back. But I remember there was a guy here this last year, and he converted to Judaism, Orthodox convert, and someone wanted to convert to Judaism, so the person asked him, what's your advice? He said, my advice is when a rabbi says, sorry, I'm busy, I'll call you back, he won't. If you really want to reach him, you have to keep calling. So anyways, I try and call people back anyways. They didn't call me back, and I was like, okay, whatever, I don't know. A couple days later, I was like, well, this guy passed away probably, and I have to make sure they have a Jewish burial. So I called him back, and he says, oh my gosh, Rabbi, this is crazy. You're a miracle worker. My husband woke up 2 hours after you left. You came and you told me you brought hope, and I said, wait, what meds is he on? I started asking questions, and I realized there was one med that he wasn't taking that he should take, and he woke up and he's awake and he's right here talking with me. It's a miracle. She told her children and grandchildren, I met her grandchildren, they don't even live in Prescott. Years later, this lady doesn't live in Prescott, and they're like, oh my gosh, my grandmother's always talking about your miracles. Okay. Anyways, this guy comes up, I put tefillin on him, and there's a Jewish doctor at the VA, and I say, that guy, they're trying to pull a plug on this guy because there was a whole fight if they should fund it or not. I said, he's talking, walking, you can't pull the plug on him. The guy's like, she has to let go of him already. I was like, you don't let go of people who are making Jewish perverted jokes. You know what I mean? He's in a good state. So he ended up living 4 months longer. He went home, they got home care and everything like that. And I remember they went all the way 4 months before Pesach until Pesach. So I came to her house, I said, do you keep kosher every day? She said, Rabbi, I tried. I can't find filter fish and matzah, I can't find anything. I said, that's not kosher. If you go vegetarian 1 day a week, that's kosher. You go vegan 1 day a week, it's kosher. You go to Trader Joe's 1 day a week and buy kosher meat, you kept kosher that day. You could do 1 day a week. So anyway, just trying that story. Providing Jewish children with a Jewish education. That's another one of the campaigns. Every child has to have the opportunity to have Jewish education. Loving one's fellow Jew. Obviously, Stroll, we have to go and try and affect other people. We can't just keep it ourselves. Go ask your Jewish friends, how are you doing? Are you okay? Is there any way I can help you? Help you materially or spiritually. And adopting the mitzvah of family purity. This is the mitzvah of mikvah and the mitzvah of the family. We believe that families are a very holy union and should follow Jewish law as best as possible. So this is the end of the course. This course has helped me a lot, kind of focus on positivity and know that this is what our life's about, and we got to grow in that direction. So now we'll go. So what's your mission? Helping another Jew fulfill their personal mission has infinite value and meaning. Okay.
Spiritual heights. 1. The most effective path to self-improvement is to stop focusing on ourselves and to place others at the center of our attention. 2. When helping